Hey, Patricia.
Hi, Kim.
How are you? What have you been up to?
Oh, I'm well. Still dealing with snow and freezing temperatures, but otherwise, just doing well. I wanted to share with you this wonderful article that I just read over the weekend from my favorite writer from the New York Times, John McWhorter. And it's about the word woke. It's very interesting and informative. He discusses the origins of the word, which comes from Black English as a term for social awareness, particularly regarding racial injustice. But then he goes into how it was first recorded in the 1930s and 40s, all the way to when it gained mainstream use in the 2010s before undergoing pejoration, as of lately, turning into a term of ridicule. But it's so wonderful. He closes with this reflection about how woke has expanded beyond leftist politics with terms like the woke right, which we've seen emerging in the last couple of years. And I don't know, it was just so fascinating, a very refreshing article with lots of research and also deep thinking. I love thinking about language, as you know, so it's interesting to think that this word, has a larger context and, I don't know, just a rapid evolution of language through social media and cultural discourse. Just really fascinating. I want to recommend it to everyone out there.
So cool.
But I want to hear about you, and I know that you're in the middle of LA Art Week, right?
Yeah.
And today we're talking about that. So let's jump right in because I want to hear all about it. So welcome to the Art Equation. Welcome to the Art Equation, a podcast from Now Be Here. I'm one of your hosts, Patricia Ortega, and our historian and independent curator.
I'm your other host, Kim Schoenstatt, a contemporary artist and organizer of Now Be Here, a directory of and for women and non-binary artists.
On this podcast, we have a little charla, a little bachipapo about making art and making exhibitions. We invite fellow artists, curators, archivists, and people from different areas of the art world to share their knowledge and their experience.
We are curious about what goes on in the day-to-day of arting. We want to talk shop, get in the weeds about what goes into art shows, talk with the makers and the doers of the art world. Welcome to the Art Equation. So on this podcast, we're always showing different aspects of the art world. In the last 2 weeks, Patricia and I attended two different but also kind of similar events. She went to an art conference in New York, and I went to two art fairs in LA.
We wanted to bring part of those experiences to you, our listeners. And like Kim said, these big events are very different but also similar. They're both part of the art world and attract a lot of people to gather in the same place for a few days. And at first, we thought it could be interesting to do one episode where we could compare and contrast the two experiences. But each event brought up so many interesting things that the art world is dealing with right now. So we decided, instead of doing one episode, to dedicate two single separate episodes to each. So for this one, Kim is taking the lead, and I will be asking her questions about her experience at Frieze LA, which I think closes today, is it?
Sunday, yeah.
Oh, so we're in the middle of it.
We're in the thick of it. This is go time. Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Welcome to LA Art Week.
So tell us about it. How was it?
We had a lot of fun. Okay, so producer Sky and I went to Felix Art Fair at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel, and the next day we went to Frieze Art Fair at the Santa Monica Airport.
Interesting. I've never heard of Felix. What is that about? Is that part of Frieze?
No, it's a separate art fair. It's similar, but it's more intimate. Because it's hosted at the Roosevelt Hotel, you're literally going into hotel rooms and bathrooms that have been turned into gallery booths. There's a pool and a really good Caesar salad. It's pretty funny.
Wait, do you say bathrooms?
Totally. I did. Yes. It's hilariously, it's like Some of the best work was in the bathrooms. And
I bet.
full disclosure, I had a piece at Timothy Hawkinson Gallery in the bathroom, and it looked fabulous.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. That reminds me of Vegas, where, I lived for 6 years. They used to host art exhibitions at old motels. I guess it's a Wild West invention, and I love it. And you know what's funny? I actually just heard today that the Roosevelt Hotel hosted the first Oscars.
Ooh.
So that seemed like a really interesting connection.
That's amazing. That's so cool. And there is this tradition of having art fairs in hotels. I think it started in New York at the Gramercy, and then at the Chateau Marmont in LA. There was, of course, the Dependent, and now there's one called the Post Fair at the old Santa Monica Post Office.
Oh, I see. Of course, New York did it first. We won't take it away. We won't take that away from there. But with these setups, though, there are spaces already built for crowds, right? Like rooms, bathrooms, parking, the bar, all the infrastructure is already there.
Exactly. But on the other hand, Frieze is a much bigger fair and is completely fabricated.
I mean, like a circus tent, I guess.
Yeah. But, I mean, it's a fancy one. Like, Frieze erects a temporary tent each year. It pops up from nothing. The tent was designed by local architect Y Architecture. It is elevated 2 flights above the ground, which allows the HVAC system to be pumped up from below. And they put these benches over the grates, right? So you're not stepping on a grate, but the benches actually diffuse the air to circulate really beautifully.
Wow, that sounds, wow.
It kind of sometimes it makes it a little chilly to sit on, and sometimes that's kind of nice.
Wow, that sounds pretty sophisticated and impressive, I have to say.
Yeah, and the coolest part is that the ceiling has translucent panels which flood the tent with light.
Oh, like how much light are we talking about?
A hilarious amount of light. Like so much amount of light that people with transition lenses in their glasses are walking around with slightly tinted glasses inside the tent. Some people even were just like oscillating between regular glasses and then sunglasses because it was really so bright. It was kind of hilarious. I mean, but when you look at that in contrast to the Felix Art Fair, which I actually think I didn't quite address before, you asked if it was part of Frieze. And just to be really clear, it's not part of Frieze. It's an independent fair. These are 2 separate entities. Felix is a smaller fair. It's more scrappy, and it's in a domestic setting. And so the light in the bathrooms, of course, is fabulous because bathroom lighting is made to be fabulous. But otherwise, it's like a hotel room. And you really can't escape hotel room lighting.
Oh, wow, Kim, you've brought us this soundscape, sensorial scape of the fair. I'm so excited about that, but I'm curious about these 2 fairs and how they're different. What was the energy like?
Well, I mean, both were chaos and action. I mean, there's a lot of people. You also never want to interrupt folks who are working. But at Frieze, we did get to speak with a few galleries who said the vibe was different this year compared to other years.
What do you think that was? Because of the fires?
Totally. The fires happened right at the point when some folks would have been buying their tickets to come out to Frieze. I mean, even you and Taras ended up changing your plans. So
we changed our plans when that was all happening. And well, then the flood here, the gallery, it was just a really crazy time. Like everything happened at the same time.
Which makes a lot of sense. And I think a lot of folks did that. And so there were less international and national visitors. But honestly, it was kind of nice. Less performative designer head-to-toe looks and more local and national curators, arts workers, and genuine art world supporters. The gallerists were saying that things were going well, which means they probably made their booth back, and it was more relaxed and less frenzied. More hugs, less air kissing.
Oh, wow. That is amazing. What a great observation. So at Frieze, did you get to talk to people? You said galleries were a little hard to pull for a conversation, but who else was there?
Oh, we got some amazing audio clips. It was a tad harder and a bit more awkward than we thought it was going to be, but we did end up hanging out in Chris Burden's Nomadic Folly, which was produced for the Istanbul Biennale in 2001. I know I think you saw some pictures on my Instagram. It was the coolest thing.
Yes, yes.
It was a series of tents using objects and materials from Istanbul. It was literally an oasis inside an art fair, and folks were using it to refresh and visit. So we actually commandeered a tent and chatted with Christina Valentine, Associate Director and Curator at the ArtCenter College of Art and Design Galleries, Yayoi Shionoiri, the VP of External Affairs and General Counsel at Powerhouse Arts in New York, and Sarah Conley Odenkirk, founder of ArtConverge, who's an arts lawyer and arts advocate.
That is fun. I guess we're in for a treat in this episode, but I love the tent. I saw pictures, and that is a very interesting title for it, Nomadic Folly. It looks also very convenient, too, kind of like a ready-made recording booth, a studio away from the studio we usually record in, so wonderful.
Yeah, it was super chill, 100%. I felt a little bit like a real reporter and not just an artist asking dumb questions I've always wanted to ask, but we had some really interesting conversations. Even before I started recording anything, though, one thing I was really touched by is one curator and one arts journalist said that they were having a hard time focusing on the art because they weren't there for the art. They were there for the community and to see friends and colleagues affected by the fires and to show up for them.
Oh, wow.
Yayoi had a really good point about that. Let me play you a clip. Okay, we're here at Frieze. We're in a Chris Burden tent. I'm here with Yayoi Shionoiri. She is the VP of External Affairs and General Counsel at Powerhouse Arts in New York. Okay, so I'm curious about your thoughts on why are art fairs important to the overall health of the art world?
Yeah, thanks so much for that. We're super, super excited to be on the podcast with you all. So honored. We all love to hate art fairs in some ways. Like, we all love to be like, oh, like, I don't want to go. Like, there's too many people. It's too visually overwhelming. But at the end of the day, I think it is a way in which all of us can come together. And in some ways, it's like a big college reunion. And this element of community and communal belonging, I think, is never more important than now, especially what's happening in the world. And I really do believe that the art fair as a model still is a very important thing in our art world today.
That is so great to hear. That is really powerful to sort of reconfigure the space of the art fair for something that is not exactly meant to do, but it becomes that, right? That is wonderful.
I think CAA did that a little bit too, didn't it?
Yes, I am excited to talk about it in the next episode. Yes, very similar. It felt like never before, right? It's an event that's very competitive because you have to go through a process to get in and to present your scholarship, and you go there and you see all of the academics and professors that you admire, and you see a lot of colleagues. So of course, it has that sort of competitive edge. But this year felt like we were all just building support, building systems of support, and just being there without knowing if this is going to happen again.
Yeah. Can't wait to hear more about CAA in the next episode. This is so exciting.
So I'm going to go through a few random questions here, only because I'm always people watching. What do people come to Frieze for?
That's a really good question. And, there's so many different reasons. I was asking the same thing, too. I have a recording of Christina Valentine that might answer that. I'm going to play you the clip now.
I go to this one because LA is so spread out, and it takes so much time and effort to try to see everybody in LA alone. When I come to the fair, I meet and run into so many people that I haven't seen in a while, and also I get to see a bunch of galleries all at once.
One-stop shopping.
Yeah, it's nice. It's kind of, because it's just too much in a day to go to 2 different regions of LA.
That's amazing.
Did you talk about the other fairs that's going on too? It's been interesting.
It has been interesting because there are a lot of other fairs going on.
Post fair, and then there was always the Felix, but now there's the post fair, and then there was another one too. And it's just so interesting how there's like all this other alternative fairs are bubbling up around this one.
Have you been to any of them?
I'm planning on going to the Post Fair after this, but I just thought that was really encouraging because when this first started, it was just Frieze, and now we have all these other little initiatives popping up. It's just nice to see that kind of energy.
So this clip kind of got me thinking about how art fairs might be like the new malls, where you go to check out the new fashions and see friends and hang out with people. You get to walk around, see cool stuff. I don't know. I just had this idea about that.
Yes, no, I love her comments. You know, one thing that I've been thinking about a lot, and this idea sort of came back all the time at CAA, unless it came back to me, which is that we're used to thinking that we go to these events for networking. And yeah, the metaphor of the weaving is just, to me, a lot stronger right now, like a net building. Because it's not about having this end goal in mind, but it's actually about connecting with people through these knots, through these shared points of interest.
No, I think that's a really good point, actually, because she was talking about there's this larger sort of thing that's happening, right? That there's all these different parts that are weaving together. And even though the fair itself was, or CAA itself was built for these one things, right? Then we're actually dealing with the larger art ecosystems and how they all work and connect and strengthen through these different gatherings. But it is also a contrived and busy space. And so I was actually curious about how the art fair functions within that larger art ecosystem. The next clip I want to play for you is still in the Burden tent. Our little oasis.
That's where everything really interesting happened, I bet, at that fair.
I know. Well, it was delightful. As you touched on before, it was like a drop-in recording booth. Like it was so... it was so delightful. Anyway, so I was talking with Yayoi and Sarah Conley Odenkirk and asked them for their take on the art ecosystem. And here's a clip.
So I'm based in New York, so it's always such an honor to get to visit different cities and experience a little bit of the local ecosystem and the local artists that form part of that art community. And I would say, while of course the global art world calendar is already really, really packed, one of the things that I'm interested in is that I hope that there is still an opportunity for different models of art fairs. And what I mean by that specifically is I'm hoping that there's, again, another kind of art fair that allows for true discovery that is not necessarily tied to the commercial primary market, so that, for example, an art fair maybe has a lower gallery booth application fee or lower gallery participation fee, and then because of that it's easier for like the public to come visit. Like that is kind of eventually the art fair that I hope to get to see again.
I love that, Yayoi. That's really an exciting way of looking at art fairs, and I think that we're starting to see some of that, where there are some different models in terms of how money is shared with artists and who's involved in those art fairs. So that's, I think, a really exciting thing for us all to be looking for. Sort of building on the idea of the public art installations that we're starting to see as being more important and more integral to the art fairs, I think that does also bring attention to different kinds of ecosystems that are really rooted in the communities. And it gives the people within communities access to art that they otherwise might not see. So I think all of that together makes them pretty exciting places, even though I will say there's definitely the return of fair fatigue. So people complain about it, but the fact that you can see, as Christina was saying, so many different galleries and people in one place, there's sort of an unavoidable allure to having these group events that are exhausting and overwhelming, but also really rich and give you the opportunity to do a lot at one time.
They brought up some very good points. I love that both Sarah and Yayoi mentioned the public experience and what art fairs might look like in the future. I think this opportunity to continuously reimagine the art fair is great, it's very positive, and sort of shows that it's still changing and evolving.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think in one way, both Frieze and Felix both pivoted rather quickly when the fires happened, and they both incorporated aspects to support the local art community. They both are really designating some very good resources back into the arts community here. One gallery in Felix even put out an open call to LA artists and said, hey, if you're an artist who's affected by the fires, send us your work and we'll choose somebody to show, to put in our booth. They didn't have to do that. And that was kind of incredible. But Felix is definitely a looser model and a place where you literally poke around the hotel rooms to find the art. So you're getting more face time with the gallerist because the room just isn't that big, and that's kind of cool. But architecturally, it can also be challenging. When it gets crowded, it gets really overwhelming. Frieze has a model where the booth is expensive and you have to forecast what you're going to be showing. But they do have a public art section each year, and that's delightful. And they have a few prizes. So Frieze is definitely incorporating the larger ecosystem of the art world. But I am curious to see how these other art fairs are going to start responding.
So you think that eventually it is opening up more doors for artists. What do you think? How does it look like from the artist perspective?
Well, art fairs, on one hand, can be kind of overwhelming, and it can be a little bit depressing because you're seeing a lot of really good work, and that can be really intimidating. And you're seeing like a lot of work. Like Sky and I went to 2 different art fairs, hundreds of galleries. Each gallery had at minimum 5 artists. So that's a lot. But on the other hand, that's a lot of opportunities for artists. So like the proliferation of art fairs means that the galleries are going to bring more work and more work gets into the world. And it was an interesting comment. We were talking with one person, he's an arts worker, and he was saying that he actually enjoys the Felix Art Fair for 2 reasons. One, he can afford it. It's within his price point. And 2, he sees some surprises. He sees people he wasn't expecting, and that he really enjoyed.
There was another point I was hoping to touch on. I'm really curious about how you felt walking around as an artist versus how a curator feels, or a gallerist, or a writer, or a critic. The art fair attracts so many people from so many parts of the world. And I know you said you were going to try to ask a few people about their individual experiences. Any clips on what were people's individual and visceral responses to the fair?
I did, actually, and they were really interesting. I got Christina Valentine's thoughts, and here's one of the clips from her. As an artist, I always feel a little bit uncomfortable at art fairs because, like, galleries, they don't want to talk to me. They're doing business. And so as a curator, do you probably have a very different experience because they want to talk to curators?
Frankly, I don't always tell them who I am. I walk around and I write. I start to take notes. This is a really great place for me to take notes of artists and then reach out to the gallerists later because they're so busy, and if I don't know them personally, I don't really want to, chat because I'm trying to go through very quickly myself.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
That is fantastic. I can actually relate to what Christina is saying because I myself feel a little bit incognito too, but more because I'm starting to think myself more as this art historian / artist / curator. It's like, which side of me shall I show, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. I love this idea of the incognito curator. Like,
it is true that you get different responses from people depending on who you are and how you present yourself.
Oh, 100%. 100%. But yeah, I mean, that is a good point of like, which side do you show? And that actually comes up in one of the next clips I want to play for you. So after a long day at the fair, producer Sky and I ended up at the tequila tent.
Oh, my favorite.
It was like just what we needed. The sun was going down and we just had a couple drinks and just kind of like decompressed and debriefed.
Ah,
And we ended up having a conversation with Leigh Cherry, who started Cherryworks, which is an agency offering tailored business strategies for both art and tech companies, and Julia Colavita, who is an artist and has worked in the tech industry and art industry for 15 years. We were chatting about Frieze as a place to network, which I think is a draw for a lot of people to come to the art fair. Let me play you a clip from that.
We want to be professional, but we also can cross these lines of different roles. And that's the thing. It's like, yes, we are here professional. You're my client. But at the same time, I want to know you personally and know how you are invested in the art world. And that's interesting.
But unfortunately, as an artist, but I think that's probably more natural for you to talk about also because you've been a gallery, you've played like many different parts in the art ecosystem. But I think especially if you're talking to galleries, there's such a stigma as an artist against like self-solicitation that like if you're working for a tech company that is also working within the art ecosystem and galleries and fairs and stuff, like to start talking about your own practice in a way is like, I don't know, it can be like looked down upon or you just end up feeling like a grain of sand or something. I don't know.
Well, I think the most important thing to remember at art fairs is that galleries pay a lot of money to be here and to sell art. So that's number one. And anyone should understand that. Like, you are not going to sell galleries anything. Like, that is not why anyone should be here. I'm here on multiple levels, and that's like to see art, to meet people and run into people, to introduce people, and you follow up later.
But like the art world is such a relationship place. So when you were asking before, like as an artist, is Frieze a place to network and like how's the vibe? It's like absolutely. Like if you get in a room or a giant tent or even this like little tequila stand, like you're gonna talk to people and you're gonna meet other artists or curators or people that have foundations or writers. So like naturally 100%, like that's why like as an artist I was like I always want to have a job in the art world because no matter what you're going to naturally make relationships and connections and meet people. So
Okay, so that got real right there. And I loved how Julia was jumping right on your point that you were just talking about the different roles in the art world and how sometimes when you present one way, you get a response in one way and you present another way and you get a response the other way. I also really liked how she was talking about how she wanted a day job still within the art world so that she could stay close to what she loves and what she does. I did the same thing and I loved it, but definitely a line you got to walk.
yeah, but I also noticed how she mentions this idea of the organicity, how organic these connections form, right? And I sort of felt very similar at CAA that we sort of gravitate to certain things and that's how connections get made. And it's almost like you find your niche, you find your people, and you meet new people through that. I don't know, I find that to be, going back to this idea of net building, right, instead of the networking, very powerful, especially right now when we really need to make connections across the board and support each other, but also, in a way, find the areas and the places where you could serve the best.
Yeah, I think I like this net building. I love that. Like I'd said, I mean, art fairs used to be really hard for me to go to because here are all these amazing galleries and artists, and the last thing they wanted to do was see another artist walk into the booth. Like I am no help to them at that point.
But now you seem to enjoy them.
Well, I shifted my mindset. Like Mary Leigh was saying, galleries invest a lot of money, and the last thing they want to do is see an artist come in and distract them from the hustle. But it's a great moment to see them in action. How galleries presented their artists, how they talked about the work, how they engaged people or didn't engage people. To me, it became a recon mission, right? Where I'm actually there to observe the whole situation. How are these galleries working or not working? And when I shifted my mindset from thinking about how much great work there is out there to more of a reconnaissance mission of learning about how these galleries work and seeing how they work and what they're bringing and how they're interacting with people, then I started relaxing and just enjoying the experience.
I love that. I love that. I think that there is something collectively taking place that I'm getting this feeling, which is like a sort of collective resistance to a lot of the rhetoric that's going on around, which is very money-centered, very wealth-building centered. And I think that we're all naturally now shifting gears and being less invested in what we can get or what we can gain out of these events, and being really into the pleasure of things, into the experience of things, into the human aspect of things. You know, I found myself listening, and I'm getting from you that you also found yourself looking from a certain distance, and therefore having more of the experience of somebody who is taking the temperature of not only the fair but of the times too, of the present time.
Well, it's like that curator and the arts writer that I talked about earlier in the episode. They were at these fairs not to see the art. They were there to support and to be there for the community.
Yes.
And to, like you were saying, the net building aspect.
Yes.
Or the net weaving, sorry.
The net weaving, I like that.
I love this because it also happens over time, right? Like
Yes.
you go one string at a time when you're weaving.
I think the weaving, it is the central metaphor. At least it was for me at CAA, and I'm gonna talk about it when we meet next time. But yeah, you said it very well. It is a net weaving.
Okay. Yeah.
Just to wrap things up a little bit, tell me what was the best part of the event?
Well, with the fires happening here, I've been thinking a lot about what makes memories. Mm-hmm. And artists and art workers are taking advantage of the available space to go in and enjoy and celebrate. And so I love how artists have open studios. I like how the galleries are putting on great shows. Some galleries are actually putting out city guides, like, here, go to this restaurant, go to that place, here's a great shop. And I saw folks that I haven't seen in years, and it was delightful. I got the biggest, juiciest hugs. And I also saw a lot of people hitting the pavement. Like, there were people in the art studios, there were people getting out and beyond the fairs and visiting local artists, and that was really super. And so I know the word community gets bounced around a lot, but this really felt more like the purpose was support and less commerce.
Oh, I love that. And, you know, yes, I often get that feeling of, oh, this word gets bounced around a lot. But I don't know, if we're really into this weaving thing, then we have to understand the power of repetition.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that absolutely happened during the fairs. And it was genuine. Okay, so we're going to do a little episode wrap up. We have some thank yous. Thank you to our amazing guest interviewees, Mary Lee Cherry, Julia Colavita, Sarah Conley Odenkirk, Yayoi Shionoiri, Christina Valentine. And big thank yous to Brooke Cantor and the Frieze team for getting us press passes, Sky Park Tausig for being the amazing producer, to Ross Mutla and the University of Maryland for supporting us, and Jonathan Formansky, thank you for letting us use your music.
And as always, thank you to our listeners. We'll be back in 2 weeks with a new episode.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. We are The Art Equation. You can find us wherever you listen every other Thursday.
Thanks for being here with us. We'd really love to hear your thoughts. So please subscribe. And if you have a moment to leave a review, it really helps us out. We love the feedback. Talk to you soon here on The Art Equation. The Art Equation is a podcast from Now Be Here with support from the University of Maryland Art Gallery. Now Be Here is a directory and resource created by and for women and non-binary artists. You can find more information at www.nowbehereart.com. Yeah, we went off the rails a little bit.
Do I have something else to say? Where am I? Okay. Here I go. Okay.